Morning. So for those of you who grew up in a large household, you instinctively understand that it takes considerable effort on behalf of everyone to keep all of the moving parts churning in relatively the same direction. My experience, having grown up as one of 6, living in a home with only one full bathroom, was of being an active, if not always consenting, participant in controlled chaos. Looking back on it now through the lens of a parent of only 2 children, I don't know how we made it work. We certainly had our moments, but I can tell you it was a lot of fun along the way. I was thinking about this on Tuesday morning as I appealed to my daughters to pick up the piles of clothes, stuffed animals, and books off of their bedroom floor. Like most toddlers, my children have selective hearing. And so you can imagine how much progress was being made as they wanted no part in cleaning up the mess that they had created. As Gibson, our eldest daughter, said, "Daddy, why can't you clean this up? You're better at it than I am." So at that moment, 2 thoughts went through my head. One I can share with you guys today, one I can't. Or else I'll get a visit from Protective Services. The other thought was of my own father, in a story he used to share with us when we were kids. So once upon a time, there was a mighty king who ruled over a vast land. One day the king told some of his workers that he wanted them to dig a large pond. Once the pond was dug, the king gathered all of his people and made an announcement. He declared that on the following night, each household in the kingdom was responsible for having one member of the family bring a glass of milk to pour into the pond. In this way, the pond would be full of milk the following morning. After receiving the order, all of the people returned to their homes. So that night, a farmer's son prepared to take a glass of milk to the pond on behalf of his family. As he walked along the road, the son thought that since everyone else was going to be pouring a glass of milk into the pond, he could get away with pouring a glass of water instead of a glass of milk. Because it was a dark, moonless night, he figured no one would notice. Besides, with so many people pouring glasses of milk into the pond, one glass of water would not make a difference. And with that, the son decided to drink his glass of milk. He quickly filled the empty glass with water from the stream and poured the water into the pond. The son did not see anyone at the pond, and he returned to his home. So in the morning, the king gets up, gets on his horse, and rides to the pond. And he's astonished when he gets there to see that the pond was only filled with water. It wasn't just the farmer's son who had poured water instead of milk into the pond. All of the people of the kingdom had done the same thing. Everyone had been thinking like the son. I don't have to pour our precious milk into the pond. Someone else will do it. In this kingdom, nobody had. So after all these years of hearing the story, I still can't help but think of the pond of milk as a giant bowl of Fruit Loops or Lucky Charms. But once you get past that enticing image, the story makes a lot of sense on a lot of different levels. Sticking with the cereal theme, most of us will recall Mr. Frankel's recent appeal for members of the community to both stop taking and to return missing spoons, forks, and cups from the dining room. By Mr. Frankel's estimate, they've had to replace close to 150 spoons this year, close to 125 forks, and 75 cups. But hey, what's 1 spoon or 1 cup? Nobody will miss it, right? Nobody will notice. But what happens when 10, 25, or 50, or 75 people start thinking the same way? In this community, we're extremely fortunate and privileged in that the cutlery and cups will be replaced. But we all know outside of this community, and even within this community, that's not always the case. How about taking out the trash in the dorm, or cleaning up after ourselves in the dining hall? Okay? You're thinking, right, I'm not going to do it because somebody else will. While these may seem like trivial examples, what happens when we're talking about something that can't be easily replaced? What happens when we're talking about people and helping those that are in need? Pick your person, pick your cause. Maybe it's the guy living in your dorm who's having a tough time fitting in. Maybe it's the teammate who is struggling finding his game. Maybe it's the person who needs food or clothing or shelter. Maybe it's the person who is sick or the person who is ill. Too often it is easy to avoid being the person who takes the first step to reach out and help. It's easy to blend in with the crowd, go along with the flow, or hide in the cover of a moonless night. We often justify this inaction by saying that someone else will have that conversation, give that pat on the back, make the donation, or sacrifice the time to support or care for those who need help. In fact, that often does happen, that someone will indeed step up. And truth be told, as we all know, there are so many needs and so many causes, one person can't possibly solve all of the world's problems. However, what a difference we could make if each of us were to commit to not leaving things that need to be done to others. Think about how many things that could change for the better and could change sooner. So my grandmother on my father's side used to volunteer for the Canadian Cancer Society. And April is Daffodil Month for that important organization. And so my grandmother used to volunteer by driving around to banks and pharmacies to sell little plastic yellow daffodils to raise money for the charity. And oftentimes, my grandmother would bring me along with one or two or three of my siblings. And on a number of occasions, as we were riding along, my grandmother would say to her young passengers that life wasn't supposed to be easy, but that we are supposed to make a difference. Perhaps one way we can do that is by working to change our way of thinking. When thinking of helping out, instead of assuming others will take care of it, recognize and acknowledge that it starts with each of us. But if we don't do it, because if we don't do it, someone else might not. Unfortunately, my grandmother never had the opportunity to meet my daughters. But I think it is a pretty safe bet that she wouldn't be picking up their bunnies, books, or blankets off of the bedroom floor. But I am sure she would have loved bringing them a cup of milk. Thank you.